o'clock I board a flight to Kauai to meet the realtor tomorrow to go look at houses over there.
Wow.
Deep breath. There have been a lot of deep breaths. This sounds like, oh, it's so wonderful and easy. It's really a lot of work to go through all of this. But so here we are. And making such a huge decision and taking such a giant leap has really required me to pull forth everything that I know about this teaching of science of mind so that we can walk through this knowing that your beautiful reading this morning, that was just for me. That, excuse me, I'm recovering from whatever. That inner compass, that inner guide is working with us on all of this because of the way in which it's all fallen together. So here we are, and we've been in that process of trying to figure out what to let go of and what to keep and what we really need to ship and what we can easily do without. And that's one level of getting unstuck, isn't it? It's just dealing with all the material stuff. I've wanted to do that kind of purging for a long time anyway for the sake of my children so they wouldn't just have to come in and get a bulldozer, which is kind of what I thought they'd have to do. Excuse me. If I could get some water, I'd really appreciate it. I have a cup down there, but it's empty. So once I return home, I'll know what size house we're going to live in, which is going to help. And that will also help us get unstuck as well. But that getting rid of and releasing things has made me understand that sense of freedom when you start to let go of things that have been kind of holding you up. The principles of feng shui say that it's all about energy, and when you're blocking the energy, you feel it in your body. Well, I think that's absolutely true because I'm learning the sense of liberation that I really hadn't understood as clearly because I know that I've been attached to things. I have a lot of wonderful family things that, have come down through generations, and I realize I've been attached to those things. And I also realize in some ways that I've held on to some things because back in my earlier years, thank you so much, when I didn't have very much money, I would worry that if I got rid of something, I might need it later and then I wouldn't have it. And so there was that kind of, and I began to see that, which was something that I hadn't really come to terms with before. So this has been a really interesting process, this whole letting go thing. But there's more than that to this, and more than that to the whole idea of getting unstuck. There's something so liberating about letting go, and there's something about moving to that next level of letting go, because we get into a comfort zone sometimes. And when we get into a comfort zone, I think we find ourselves even arguing for our limitations. Because then we kind of we know what's familiar, right? And even though we also know that even in that comfort zone and knowing what's familiar, there's some stuff that we really could start to move in order to move some of that energy. But what I also know about being in that comfort zone or about arguing for our limitations, the way that we argue for our limitations is we really tell ourselves a falsehood. So there are a lot of things that we tell ourselves that we really understand somewhere inside are not true, but we still tell them to ourselves. Does that make sense to you? So what could some of those things be that would hold us, those limiting thoughts that would hold us back? Can somebody tell me one or two of them? Yes.
I don't have enough money.
I don't have enough money.
I don't have enough time.
Don't have enough time.
I'm too old to do
You're
that.
too old to do that. We could have told ourselves that too. We decided, well, how old is too old? If we don't do it now, when? We wait till my dad lived to be 100, but got harder to do things like that. But how about some other ones? Any others?
I couldn't wear that at this weight.
Oh, yeah, right. I can wear that this way. Right, that's a good one. I love that one. So we have these beliefs that we hold on to because we have this argument with our own head And the antidote is always the same. The antidote is always love. It's always love. When I was a young girl, I had difficulty with math. A lot of difficulty with math. I just really didn't understand math. And my dad was an engineer. He couldn't understand how his child couldn't understand math. And so he worked with me every night after school to do my homework so that I could get a decent grade in math in school, really because then he could say, my daughter passed her math class because she struggled so. But you know what? That then later became this feeling of every time I look at a spreadsheet, I break out in hives. Because there's still that part of me that thinks I'm not good at math. Even though now we have computers and math is easy. But it was that same falsehood that I told myself over and over again. The big one for me, and I'm going to share that one with you right now. The biggest one for me is this one. This is the one that has gone through all of my life. Not enough. Anybody else got not enough? Okay, I have learned this almost all of my life. Now I gotta say, I'm way better now. Way better now. But there were all kinds of reasons why I bought into that lie from the time I was very small. Because of this overly ambitious father, I was never, no matter how well I did, never quite good enough. So there was that feeling. And then that, you see, once you get a thought like that or an idea like that inside your mind, then you go about proving it, right? See, I'm not enough. I just couldn't add up. I couldn't measure up. I was too short for some things that I was doing. I wore these Coke bottle-bottom glasses that kept me out of getting to play sports. I did, there were just all these limitations. I was very sick as a child, so there were a lot of things I couldn't do. So that I'm not enough thing got to really grow big inside. So then you become an overachiever, right? There's that other side to it. Okay, I am enough. I'm going to show everybody how much I can do. Until you come to a place where you just finally settle in and you look at yourself and go, how much is enough? How much is enough? And what about this divine presence, this power, this love that whispers in your ear and tells you, I love you just the way you are? That's when we're enough. That's when we're enough. When we come to that realization. When we come to that realization that you are enough. That it has nothing to do with who you are out there in the world. It has everything to do with listening to that inner space, that inner place, to that deep divine voice that always says, yes, I love you. You are my child. You are an expression of the divine. You are a child of the one. So these false limiting beliefs, whatever they are for you, always go back to the same thing. Go back to not understanding that love that is God, that love that allows Spirit to run our life. And once we allow Spirit to run our life, we set ourselves free from those false beliefs. And that's why you have another sticky. And this one is love. And this one says, more than enough. More than enough. Because I'm an expression of the one. I'm an expression of God. Now, I'm just as many faults and foibles as anybody else. There is absolutely nothing that is more perfect about me than there is about anyone else here in this room. I've made lots of mistakes. I've learned lots of lessons. I've stepped in holes, but I've always gotten back up. And so have you, right? So we are enough. We are enough just the way we are. We are enough, whatever it is that we feel is limiting us, doesn't need to limit us anymore. One thing I did learn, and this was also a lesson from my father, and God bless my dad, he lived to be 100 years old, he passed 3 years ago. Our relationship, as he grew older, I was his point person, his advocate, looked after him, and we grew to such a wonderful deep level of